We are Chris Lee and Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14, presented by Steaks, here to talk Alabama's game with Michigan State. For you Michigan State visitors, of course, we're SEC guys. That's where we spend the most of our time watching ball. We have seen some Michigan State this year, though. Notably, that game against Kentucky should be a fun one. Blake, I think you and I both get the impression watching Alabama that team is far from putting it together, but my goodness, that team has got some parts.
They do, and I'm trying to find the schedule here because we do need to point out that this is
I've
a
got
part
it.
of the what are they calling it? It's still the Phil Knight Invitational, right? We're still using that verbiage, I think, to describe the
It's in
tournament.
Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Phil Knight Invitational. I know it was the PK80, but that would have been several years ago, I guess. But yeah, so this one tips off late night tip, 9:30 Central, on Thursday night. So eat your Thanksgiving food, and boy, if all that's food does not put you to sleep, which that's always a challenge. 9:30 p.m. So pace yourselves in the eating department on this. But yes,
Prepare.
Alabama. Hey, a lot of pieces, just like a Thanksgiving dinner. A lot of pieces to this Alabama team, and I mean, you can clearly see the upside. You and I were texting as we were watching Arkansas Creighton, and I don't want to spoil anything here, but the two best teams I've seen this season are probably Arkansas and Alabama. I
Yeah.
don't think Auburn's far off, but I still think maybe right now, if I do my power rankings the second, I'd put those teams 1 and 2. But we will also see where Alabama falls in that after they play Michigan State, because this is their biggest test of the season so far. And I think this is one where, this is a Michigan State team, Chris, that should be 4-0 right now. If you really think about it, they should have beat the Zags, lost by 1 there, beat Kentucky in double overtime, then beat Villanova in that game as well. So a very well-tested Michigan State team to this point. Not going to say Alabama's not tested, but they have not been tested the way Michigan State has. So I wonder, for an Alabama team that does have some young guys playing here, we talked about the freshman group, going up against an experienced Michigan State team. I think that is kind of another little tidbit to watch here in a neutral court environment.
Yeah, the exact text that I sent you last night. You watch more than me, but it's starting to feel as if Alabama and Arkansas are the top two teams. I wanted to run that by you because you do see more college hoops than I see. I try to watch a good bit of it, but I've got a lot of things going on right now. But when I've watched Alabama, one thing that's impressed me is that they've just got, it feels like they've got a little bit of everything. And it feels like it doesn't feel like it. They do. They have a ton of length everywhere, and they can get out. They'll put big guys on the perimeter and guard you there. And I just think they're going to be a headache to get shots off over.
No, I mean, I agree with that because it's a team, right? What are the numbers we talked about? I think it was, I don't remember what game it was, but offensive rebounds. Like, this is a team that will, I may have texted you that at some. I was like, this is a team that will may just beat some teams just off of offensive rebounds. Like, they may score enough points to beat a team just on getting offensive rebounds because they have so many different guys, whether it's Bediako, Miller, and so forth, where they just, the length, the athleticism. And I know we say that a lot. Like, we describe teams, it's college basketball. You're going to have a lot of teams that have a great length, great athleticism. But boy, this Alabama team feels like they are on, kind of a different level right now in terms of what they can do in that department. Something I think you look at here, because this is the first big game for these freshmen, right? And think about what we talked about, like in Kentucky's game against Michigan State. We said, first big game, not just for the freshmen, but for the new guys, kind of getting acclimated to what they're going to do. So I think there's something to that here against a Michigan State team that, like we said, let's face it, Izzo just finds a way to win big games, even though they lost that one to Gonzaga by a point. They are a well-oiled machine still, still a very, good team here that's going to present some challenges, I think, for this Alabama team. But on the Alabama side of things, the number one 2-point defense in the country right now, only allowing opponents to shoot 32.7%. Number 2 in effective field goal percentage defense, 35.5%. So I think there's a lot of
number
things
one in offensive rebounding. You said they were good. They're number one in that too.
Number one in that category. They've had, hit double digits many times, I think, in that regard thus far this season. And I think one thing you circle here into this matchup, it is still an Alabama team that is going to do what, Chris? They're going to shoot a lot of threes, aren't they? And they went 21 of 46 against Jacksonville State. Think about that. Just think about how ridiculous that is. They shot 45.7%, hit 21 of 46 threes against Jacksonville State. They shot 35 against South Alabama, 22 against Liberty, 28 against Longwood. Think about that. They went 3 of 28 against Longwood, 21 of 46 against Jacksonville State. My point is what? That's a
High
really
variance of
wide
outcome.
range. That's a wide range when you shoot a lot of threes. And so I think in a neutral court environment here, this is a team that still is going to depend on a lot of 3-point makes to get a lot of offense going. And so I think against Michigan State, who is allowing opponents to shoot 26.5% from three so far, 37th in the country, which, I guess you could probably look at some of the teams they played and say, well, Kentucky has not, maybe we thought they'd be a great shooting team, having at times in these big games. But I think that's a big thing to circle here because, are the threes going to fall the way they have in some of these other games? I think, seeing how Alabama works its offense is going to be a little bit more glaring to watch here against a team like Michigan State versus the 4 teams they played thus far.
Okay, let's talk about Sparty. But before we do that, a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Stakes. Predict sports better than the crowd for a chance to win NFTs. With Stakes, players can cement their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. Use our invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. Okay, Michigan State, coached by the legendary Tom Izzo, has beaten Northern Arizona, Kentucky, and Villanova. They'll have a little bit of a rest. Last game was Friday night before the Thursday game with Alabama. Only lost to Gonzaga on a neutral floor. That a 1-point loss. Michigan State has been a little better, I think, than most probably predicted coming into the year, although that just kind of seems silly to say because it's Tom Izzo, it's Michigan State. That team wins every year, and I mean, to expect Michigan State to get off to a poor start is probably misplaced.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't word that really well, but you know what I mean.
I get it. Michigan State is we've seen them, like you said. We saw them play against the Zags. We saw them play against Kentucky. It's just people can say what they want, but like I said, they just find ways to win more often than not. And I think the fact that they've been tested against Gonzaga, against Kentucky, against Villanova. I know Villanova's a little different now in the post Jay Wright era, but it's still a team that has 2 losses by a combined 6 points. So it's not like Villanova's 2-2, but it's not a bad team. But I mean, this is another one, right? Like just in the gauntlets of games that Michigan State has played to this point, and I think when we talk about kind of the playmaking ability on this team, I mean, we talked about it, right? Like just the difference in, some of these games, like a Joey Hauser, what he can do. And, I think he's made 11 threes this year, but the past 2 games, he's really shot it well, obviously shot it well against Kentucky. How does he, match up against a Brandon Miller, who, is certainly one of the most talented freshmen in the country. Same with Sissoko, who we've seen, had a huge impact in that game against Kentucky, made some big plays in that one. Only scored a point in that game against Villanova, but, can score. I think that's worth noting here. I don't think I would just take that and say that's what he is. He can certainly score some points and give them a big boost. The backcourt, we talk about those guys, Walker and company, Walker at 22 against Villanova. So I think that's it, is when you look at this Michigan State team, try to find the exact numbers here in terms of their rotation. But I just think this is a team that they've been tested, and I think there's something to that. They're more experienced overall, and they do have a nice rotation of guys they can turn to. Like I said, Hauser, Walker, Hall are the ones leading the way scoring wise. But you've got a terrific point guard. They got a lot of pieces to be successful, and I just think for Alabama, when you look at this matchup on paper, this is one where Michigan State could force some turnovers. They don't turn people over a lot necessarily, but I think this is one where you see how they kind of try to attack this Alabama defense, which has been pretty good, but against different competition. So yeah, this is a tough one, Chris, because I look at these 2 teams and these are 2 good teams, and like we always say with these early season tournaments, right? It's just hard to figure out how these games are going to play out, but boy, I'm gonna stall for about one more minute, and then I'll make my official pick here.
Well, while you stall, let me just give you a little info. We are doing this Wednesday morning. There's no line on the game that we can see posted. Ken Palm has this Alabama winning 73-71, 43% chance to win. Bart Torvik has got this 73-72 Alabama with a 51% chance for Alabama to win.
So a toss-up, basically. Yeah.
That's a 57% chance for Alabama to win on Ken Palm. I don't know if I misspoke there, but
no,
anyway,
I get it.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind here. We don't know this either. Jaden Akins, I think, had an injury, foot. I think it's a foot injury here. I'm looking at. So I don't know kind of what his status is. We should probably try to find that. I'm seeing this on coverage, but I think that's something to look at. So Izzo said as of Tuesday, no major issue. So just maybe a tweak. So we don't know if he could play. He's a guy who averages 20 minutes a game, so that could be significant in a game like this. So that's something worth noting here as well. Ooh, I tell you, Chris, I said it. I would put Alabama in the top 2 in my power rankings right now in the SEC. But I've seen this Michigan State team, and I don't know.
That Michigan State should be more cohesive and more tested. I mean, there's just we talked about this last week before the Kentucky game. They've got a lot of guys who played a lot of minutes together.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that kind of thing matters around this time of the year where teams are still just getting used to playing with each other.
I think the wide variety with Alabama scoring wise, and again, you're talking about the team that can rebound with it. So even if they're missing shots, they can rebound it well enough to score consistently. I think that's what I would look for here because Michigan State, not the most efficient offensive team. At times,
3-point defense has been really good too for Michigan State.
I'd say that's something else that's been a factor. But I do think there's something to this needs to be a Michigan State style of game if they're going to win. Because I think, again, it's different in style, right? Like if you look at just the average offensive possession length, we go to Ken Palm here. Michigan State, 17.8 seconds. That's 246 nationally. Alabama, you know where it's coming, Chris. 14.9 seconds. That's 15th in the country in terms of the fastest pace. So to me, it's who controls this. Because I think if this game gets up and down, Alabama will overpower them offensively, I believe. But if Michigan State can make this a half-court type game, force an Alabama team that may shoot a lot of threes, to make more of to take more of those contested looks and make more of those contested looks, I think that makes it a little bit more challenging. Quite honestly,
Yeah,
I think Alabama's the better team, but I think in this setting, I think Michigan State, from what I've seen and how they've been challenged in 3 straight games, I think you just maybe give them the nod here because it's a neutral court environment. Alabama's got a lot of new guys that have looked really good so far, but this is that first big test. And quite frankly, Chris, we kind of said this in text messages too. The SEC in first big test games this year
not done very well.
Not been good.
No.
And so maybe I need to stop picking SEC teams to win these games and pick against them, which Alabama fans, if you've watched and followed my stuff for a long time, that was a nice trope for many years. When I picked against Alabama, they won every game. So I'm going to do that here. But I just think Michigan State, the more tested team. But man, this could be another one. We talked about Arkansas. Creighton was a great game. This could be a great game, given what the high ceiling is for both these teams.
Yeah, it feels like Mark Sears might be a key in this game too. And you don't want your point guard having as many turnovers as assists, which has been the case so far. He's had a couple of 5 turnover games, although that was against Longwood and Liberty in games that they won going away.
Well,
but
let's think about this too. Quinterly stepped up, played 17 minutes against Jacksonville State. You feel like now that was 5 days ago. He goes from 4 minutes against South Alabama, 17 in Jacksonville State. Now you would assume that number is going to go up, right? So if you can get Javon Quinterly kind of back to being himself, that's a big boost too. He had 2 threes in that game. So if he's back feeling good and they are comfortable playing him a lot in this game, then you add another weapon. Like I said, I think this Alabama team could be Final Four good. Brandon Miller, one of the best freshmen in the country. The rest of that freshman
Brandon Miller is appointment TV if you've not seen him yet.
Yeah. Like this could be the showing, like this could be the coming out party for Alabama in terms of winning a big game like this on the national stage here against Michigan State. We've already seen beat Kentucky, almost beat Gonzaga. But I just think if you're picking this game, which what we do, we try to pick every game. Obviously, we don't know how the game's going to turn out because guess what? If we did, we wouldn't be doing this. We would be spending all of our money on a betting service and just making millions. But I just think, if we have to pick one here, SEC hasn't been great in the big games thus far, and they've had some close losses. I just think Michigan State's tested. So I'll give Michigan State a slight edge heading into this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. Big stat I'm looking at here, Ken Palm's D1 experience, Alabama 297. I feel like, again, this is a team that I love. I feel like they're going to provide a lot of moments. But this just feels like the timing of it and where Alabama is when I've watched them play and the unevenness and seeing Michigan State play where it's kind of the opposite. I just feel like this is a game that I feel like you got to forget what the computers say for a little bit. I feel like you got to give Michigan State the edge just because of that tangible experience that they've got. So
should be
I
entertaining.
think that's the way we're both leaning. Yeah, I mean, look, if Alabama wins this game, we're not shocked. We love this team and what it's got, but everybody loses a few, and this looks like a spot where that could happen.
Yep.
Okay, we do live streams every Wednesday night. It's going to be mostly football focused, but it is based on what you guys want us to talk about. And so we will talk about whatever folks in the chat want to speak about. We've got previews of just about every big SEC basketball game over the next few days. We have previewed every single football game involving SEC teams. So best way to catch all that, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 14, presented by Stakes.